Have you ever had a moment where the world around you felt wrong? A flicker of movement in your peripheral vision, a sound that has no source, or the chilling sensation of being watched when you know you're alone. We tell ourselves it's just our imagination, a trick of the light. But what if it isn't? What if those moments are a glimpse into something darker, something that lies just beyond our understanding? Tonight, we're going to pull back the curtain on 3 stories from people who experienced just that. These aren't tales from a book or a movie. These are real-life accounts of creepy encounters that defy explanation. So, turn down the lights, get comfortable, and prepare yourself. What you are about to hear is true. Story 1. The Shadow in the Pines. Our first story comes from a man named Mark, who spent a summer working as a fire lookout in a remote national forest. His post was a small cabin on top of a lonely mountain, miles from the nearest town. For the first few weeks, the solitude was peaceful. He'd spend his days scanning the horizon for smoke and his nights reading by the light of a single lantern. But then, the nights began to change. It started with a feeling, a heavy, oppressive sensation that would descend upon the cabin as soon as the sun dipped below the trees. Mark would be sitting at his small table, and suddenly the air would grow cold, the silence of the forest seeming to press in on him. He dismissed it as loneliness, the isolation finally getting to him. But then he started seeing it as shadow, darker than the surrounding night, moving among the pine trees at the edge of the clearing. It wasn't the shape of a bear or a deer. It was tall and slender, almost human-like, but it moved with an unnerving, fluid grace that wasn't natural. He would catch glimpses of it from the corner of his eye, but whenever he turned to look directly, it would be gone. One night, a fierce storm rolled in. The wind howled and rain lashed against the windows of the small cabin. The radio, his only link to the outside world, was crackling with static. That's when he heard a soft, rhythmic tapping on the glass of the window behind him. Tap, tap, tap. Mark froze. He knew it couldn't be a branch. The trees were too far from the cabin. Slowly, he turned, and there, pressed against the glass, was a face. It was pale and gaunt, with 2 large, dark eyes that seemed to suck in all the light. It had no discernible features, just those 2 black voids staring into his soul. He screamed, scrambling away from the window and fumbling for his flashlight. When he finally got it on and pointed it at the window, there was nothing there. The tapping had stopped. But for the rest of that long, terrifying night, he could feel those eyes on him, watching him from the darkness. He never saw the face again, but the shadow in the pines remained a silent, menacing presence for the rest of his time at the lookout. To this day, Mark can't explain what he saw, a truly terrifying example of unexplained phenomena. Story 2. The Whispering Walls. Our second story is about a young couple, Chloe and Ben, who bought their dream home, an old Victorian house in a quiet, historic town. They were thrilled with the find, a beautiful house with so much character. But they soon discovered that the house had more than just character. It had a voice. It began subtly, faint whispers that seemed to come from within the walls themselves. At first, they thought it was the old pipes or the house settling, but the whispers grew clearer, more distinct. They would hear their names being called from empty rooms, soft, sibilant voices that would send shivers down their spines. Chloe was the first to experience something more. She was in the nursery, painting the walls a soft yellow, when she heard a child's laughter, clear as day, right behind her. She spun around, but the room was empty. The laughter echoed in her ears, innocent yet deeply unsettling. Ben was a skeptic, trying to find a rational explanation for everything. But he couldn't explain the handprint. They had been renovating the dusty attic, a space that hadn't been touched in decades. On one of the grimy window panes, clear as day, was the small, perfect handprint of a child. It wasn't there when they started, and they were the only ones in the house. The supernatural experiences escalated. Doors would slam shut on their own, objects would move from where they had been left, and the whispering became a constant, unnerving presence. One evening, they were watching a movie in the living room when the television flickered and died. In the sudden silence, a clear, childish voice whispered from the corner of the room, "Get out." They left that night and never went back. They later learned that the house had a tragic history. A young girl had died there in the late 1800s, though the circumstances were unclear. Chloe and Ben are convinced that her spirit still resides within those whispering walls. Story 3. The Road to Nowhere. Our final story comes from a truck driver named Dave, a man who has spent the last 20 years crisscrossing the country. He's seen his fair share of strange things on the lonely highways at night, but one particular encounter has haunted him ever since. He was driving through the desolate plains of Nevada, the road stretching out before him like a long, black ribbon. It was well past midnight, and he hadn't seen another car for hours. The only thing keeping him awake was a steady supply of coffee and the classic rock station on the radio. Suddenly, the radio crackled and went silent. The only sound was the hum of his engine. That's when he saw her, a woman in a white dress, walking along the side of the road. This was odd enough, given the remote location, but what was truly strange was that she seemed to be barefoot. As he got closer, he slowed down, concerned for her safety. He rolled down his window and called out, "Ma'am, are you all right? Do you need a ride?" She stopped walking and turned to face him. Her face was pale in the glow of his headlights, and her eyes were dark and empty. She didn't say a word, just stared at him with a look of profound sadness. Then she smiled. It was a cold, unnerving smile that didn't reach her eyes. A chill ran down Dave's spine. Every instinct was screaming at him to get away. He hit the gas, and as he sped past her, he glanced in his rearview mirror. She was still standing there, watching him, her white dress glowing in the darkness. He looked back at the road for a second, and when he checked the mirror again, she was gone. Shaken, Dave drove on. About 20 minutes later, he saw the flashing lights of police cars up ahead. He pulled over, and an officer approached his truck. The officer looked grim. He told Dave that there had been a terrible accident a few hours earlier. A young woman's car had broken down, and as she was walking for help, she was struck and killed by a hit-and-run driver. The officer described her. She was wearing a white dress. Dave's blood ran cold. He realized with a sickening certainty that the woman he had seen was the ghost of the accident victim, forever walking that lonely stretch of highway. This was one of those creepy encounters that defied all logic and left him questioning the very nature of reality. The shadow in the pines, the whispering walls, and the phantom of a lonely highway. 3 stories from 3 different people, all united by a brush with the unexplainable. Are these simply tricks of the mind, or are they proof that there is more to this world than we know? We'll let you be the judge. If you enjoyed these stories and want to hear more, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. And if you have a story of your own, something that has left you questioning what is real, share it with us in the comments below. You never know who else might have experienced something similar. Until next time, stay safe and try not to listen too closely to the silence.